Hey everyone, this is Dan, and this is Blade of the Immortal by Hiroaki Samura. This is a Dark Horse graphic novel. Once again, we have a manga that reads left to right, which is kind of interesting because nowadays this is a bit rare. Also interesting in this particular one, they actually have a talk about it. So normally when they do these left to right conversions, they usually just scan it in and mirror it. But in this case, the artist actually requested them to cut and paste to repanelize, which actually has some issues if you follow this thing as it goes. So, Blade of the Immortals, really interesting series. When I read this, I think this was like early college days, or maybe like the end of my high school or time in high school. It was really really cool, and I really liked it a lot, and I named it as like one of my favorite at the time. But having just finished this a reread again, I think I have to knock it down a few levels. It's still good, but it's not as good as I remember it. And I think the problem here is just I guess I've become more haughty about my Japanese or Japanese media consumption. Yeah, this is kind of a controversial aspect of this story, and that well, I guess of this whole series for those of us in the West, and that is that Manji, the main character of the story, uses a swastika as a symbol on the back of his kimono. No, this isn't alt right Nazi manga, but yeah, unfortunately, the usage of this is the ancient Sanskrit usage of it, and not necessarily the modern understanding of it. So it's kind of weird like that. So getting into it real quick here, you got an opening action scene where Manji's in a church. The setting of this is in like ancient Japan, or I guess feudal Japan, and somehow he's in a church taking confessional and gets ambushed. That this guy's actually not a priest; he's actually a headhunter after him, a guy who's known for having killed 100 people. Gets shot in the head, and then you get the kind of flip on it, which is that Manji is special because he has these worms that kind of give him basically Wolverine-like powers, where he regenerates very quickly. There is a limit to it, just like there is a limit to Wolverine's power. But so every time he gets sliced and diced or shot or anything, you always see these panels where Samura is kind of showing these worms, bringing them back together. And I think this start right here got me was like I thought it was really cool and edgy when I was in high school, but when I go back and look at it now, I think my problem with it is just sort of like, wait a minute. First off, I don't think there were that many buildings like this back in the day in Japan. I know there were missionaries and Catholic missionaries, but they didn't have anything built like this. Uh, and then I think the second part that kind of bugs me is just the opening is super edgy, and I guess if you're kind of into that kind of stuff, then I could guess why you would like this. And I think back then in high school, I was kind of like edge lord, so I thought this was super cool. But looking back at it now, I'm like, this is kind of a little bit of a try hard. So you get kind of some background with them. This is the lady that gave him the worms, and they're kind of talking about his situation. Anyhow, he kind of goofed up. He was working for a leader, or what's the correct term? I think it was a daimyo, or who he's working for. But the guy was corrupt, and he had sent him out to go kill a bunch of farmhands that complained about taxes. And he's trying to escape the authorities, and he runs into this cop and has a showdown with him. He doesn't realize this cop is actually married to his sister, so he freaking cuts him into pieces right in front of his sister, which basically breaks his sister's mind. This is what Samura does best. He always has these full one page or double page spreads of just dudes hacking each other to pieces, or chicks in certain cases later down the series, and then you have like this floral, beautiful pattern and stuff going on. It's very pretty art. Uh, and it's definitely probably the big selling point behind Blade of the Immortal is the art is amazing. Uh, Almost wish like this series would be colored. I think it would be really awesome if they did color it. There's also a lot of shading effects. I don't know if he does like actual lead shading or if this is done post processing. Anyhow, so he's taking care of his sister who he ruined her life, and you get a really fun joke right here where he accidentally eats a piece of horse shit. So his sister gets kidnapped, and in the process of trying to rescue her, she gets killed. And he comes to a realization that his life of violence is never really going to change, so he might as well take advantage of it. Goes back to the lady and says, how about instead, to repent, I'll go kill 1,000 bad guys. And this is where I kind of like looking back on it. I was like, this story's kind of silly. It's edgy as hell, but it's really the premise is really silly. What is not silly is the main villain of this story. This guy, Anatsu. This dude's actually kind of cool for a villain. And the background story of his father basically getting ejected for. This is a common trope in like these samurai mangas that that's always the traditionalist use of the sword versus the get it done philosophy usage of the sword. And his father was on the other side of it, got kicked out of his dojo for it, and because of that, my interpretation is he kind of abused his son because of it, kind of like that Dio Brando type of upbringing. Anyhow, Anatsu's a pretty cool dude. Decides he's not even gonna freaking kill this dude. And we get back to her daughter looking at the grave of her father who got murdered. And this kind of drives the plot forward. She goes after Manji to hire him as a bodyguard. And Manji kind of like, in the beginning, kind of makes fun of her, but eventually kind of relents and decides, oh, hell with it, I'll go help you out. Again, it's not really, when I look back on it, a lot of it is just sort of like, it's like characters talking shit to each other and then deciding, okay, well, I'm going to do it anyway. And I think that's kind of why when I read this again, I'm like, this isn't really that good. I think what it was is I was so amazed by the art and sort of the shock jock edgy nature of this comic. I wasn't really thinking too much about the plot or the characterization or the build up, or I should say the writing. It also doesn't help that there's just a lot of people that are like, there's a lot of guys that are using modern hairstyles in a Japanese samurai manga, and it just feels out of place. It feels super, super out of place. I'm not really a big fan of it when I look back on it now. Anyway, they run into this guy who is, kind of a creeper, and they kill him, and then she goes off on a little side quest to go ask help from her father's best friend. He kind of relents till a bunch of other crazy stuff happens, and eventually he decides, oh no, I will help you out. Anyhow, I don't want to get too much into detail of it because it's kind of a big and long book, and it would take a little more time. But the big verdict is I have to kind of knock it down a couple notches. It's not on the same level as Berserk. And honestly, I wouldn't say it's even on the same level as some of the other manga I've done. Well, obviously, some of the other manga that I've done on this channel, like Love Hina, are not even in the same category. But I would honestly say like Inuyasha and One Piece held up a lot better than this story. I still love the art, and I still remember when I was going through this, I was like, yeah, this art's amazing. But I'm not a big fan now that I've kind of reread it again. I'm like, this beginning kind of sucks. Like JoJo was a lot better, Berserk was a lot better, One Piece and Inuyasha were a lot better. Anyhow, that's it. If you like this video, or if you have any other opinions, or maybe you feel I'm not giving this thing a fair spin, let me know. If you did like the video, hit the thumbs up, subscribe, hit the bell for notifications. If you have any comments, leave them down below, and I will see you next time.